An overwhelming majority of Americans have a level of distrust for elected officials. How can government regain their trust? Hello, everyone, and welcome to Comcast Newsmakers. I'm Robert Trainum, and we are here on location in our nation's capital for the National Association of Counties Legislative Conference. Joining me is Commissioner Bryan Desloge, member of the Board of Directors for NACo. Bryan, welcome to the program.
Glad to be here.
So why do you think many Americans have a level of distrust for elected officials?
Well, I mean, if you ask the people today and say, what do you think of government? What do you think of your elected officials? Generally, you're going to get kind of a disfavorable response.
Throw all the bums out.
Absolutely. But the problem and the disconnect comes when if you ask that same group of people, what do you think about getting engaged? How would you like to get involved?
Oh, no, not me.
Right. Overwhelmingly, the same group say, I don't want any part of it. Well, it's a disconnect there, and you can't sit on the sidelines and throw stones if you're not going to get engaged.
But isn't that the American way, though? Isn't that who we are as Americans? We typically like to armchair quarterback and say, oh, we can do the job better. But when you ask the person, well, do you want to do the job? Oh, no, not me.
But it needs to change. That's the part, I think, that at some point.
And how do you do that?
Well, I think you get back to a civil debate, get to a point where you're talking about the facts, you take the partisan politics out of it. I think what happens generally, if we look at the facts, we're not that far apart. You know, what you've got is kind of the parties are driving two sides of it. You've got people that have these issues. I'm a Catholic conservative Republican. One of my best friends, Jewish liberal Democrat. We started an organization in Florida called Village Square, and it's a chance to have debates in a civil manner with no party politics, no spin, no rhetoric. And what you find is generally you're not that far apart. And
do you believe that social media and the advent of cable news and the 24-hour news cycle, is that part of the problem or is it part of the solution? Because one could make the argument that everyone has an opinion now because they're quote-unquote more informed. The downside to that is that perhaps maybe they're more informed, but not necessarily with all the facts.
Absolutely, they've got access to the facts. But back to the original tone, you know, the people need to get engaged. People need to step in. People need to vote at a minimum, and then they need to get involved in the process, whether that is running for public office or serving on committees in your communities or volunteering. That's the stuff that makes us a great country and makes the great communities around.
No offense to you, but do you believe that most Americans do not view elected officials as very sexy in terms of it's not a very attractive work environment, the pay is perhaps maybe not as competitive? Do you think that's part of it?
And I think that's a generational shift. If you think about in our parents' generation, it was an honorable, noble thing to hold elected office. Unfortunately, now what happens is people assume you have some ulterior motive. They think there's a financial gain or some stair step or career motivation here. I think we need to change that. I think we need to get back to the public service component of elected officials.
But when you open up your trusted news source, whomever that may be, when you open up the newspaper, when you turn on the news, it's all too common now, and I hate to say this, is that you may hear about an elected official that perhaps maybe broke the law, perhaps maybe bent the law. So it undermines this perception out there that all of these individuals in public service are not in it for the public good.
Right, and you can't let a few bad apples spoil the entire bunch. But the reality is we need good people willing to run for public office. We need people to get off the sidelines and engage, vote, and volunteer, run for public office. That's what's going to make the difference.
So I hear the plea in your voice, Bryan, and for the viewers that are home watching this program, how do they get involved? Besides voting, what else can they do?
At a minimum, start contacting your elected officials when you have an opinion. Otherwise, what happens is they vote in a vacuum. There are committees at every level in the local communities, whether they're school boards or city commission or county commission. We have committees that we look to the citizens to help us drive opinion. Volunteer at that level. But at the end, we need people willing to engage in the debate. We need to bring it back to a point of public service. If you've served on the Red Cross or the United Way or the Chamber of Commerce, why not think about serving in your local government? That's the logical step.
All right, Bryan Desloge, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
And thank you for joining us for this edition of Comcast Newsmakers. I'm Robert Trainum. Have a great day. Bye-bye.